Aloha. Aloha. Come on now, we just gave y'all some coffee. Aloha. Aloha. You know, I had to run back over here because I was in the booth area. If you get a chance and you see a staff sergeant named Gage Smith, I want you to harass him. Staff Sergeant Gage Smith enlisted 50 soldiers this past year for our United States Army. Let's give him a round of applause for that. For those that don't know, the requirement is 11. So he becomes everything to that soldier, that future soldier and their family. And it's very apropos with this next panel that we have coming on board. I'm Lieutenant General Retired Leslie Smith. I'm your Vice President for Leadership and Education here at the mighty Association United States Army. Our first panel today will discuss education, training, and experience, optimizing people and performance. In the area of rapid technological change, our edge remains our people. This session will explore how we refine that talent to ensure peak readiness. Moderating the discussion today is Lieutenant General Retired J.D. Johnson, VP of Government Solutions and Strategy at GM Defense. General Johnson is responsible for identifying growth opportunities among military and government customers. He spent more than 35 years in the U.S. Army with extensive overseas tours in Germany and Korea and combat tours in Iraq. In the private sector, he's held numerous leadership posts. Prior to GM Defense, he was the acting Vice President of Customer Engagement and Solutions at Raytheon. Please join me in a round of applause for J.D. Johnson.
So welcome, and I think this panel is very appropriate. I'll talk about that here in a minute as we start off the panels for AUSA LANPAC, but just two notes up front. First, you'll note that we're modeling the Brunson headsets up here. Just shows you how rapidly AUSA can adapt. I think they were downtown buying these and putting them out. So that's number one. Number two, you can see from the makeup of this panel that at some point you might struggle with accents a little bit. And I promise to work hard on enunciation with my Oklahoma accent so that this, in fact, will be a successful panel. We're very, very lucky to have the people on this panel that we have. I think this, as I started to say up front, I think this topic is especially important. Trade shows traditionally focus on all the great and wonderful things that are next door. It tends to focus on technology, tends to focus on the solutions for now and into the future. This panel focuses on people. I'd like to read a quote here from the U.S. Army's People Strategy that really kind of captures the essence of what this panel is all about. It says, "We will identify, liberate, and rapidly align the talents of our people with the work we must do to defend the nation." Think about that, liberate. Think about what that means when it comes to, first off, identifying the talent, but then ensuring that you create an environment in which each individual can rise, to their optimum position and optimize the work that they're going to provide. I'd like to go down the list here and invite or introduce just briefly the people on the panel. And in general, I'm not going to read their resumes. I could spend the entire panel period doing that because these people are so accomplished, have so much experience. But I do want to start off with Lieutenant General Kaida of the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Forces and talk a little bit about his background, because while you all very well may know the rest of the panel, you may not know his background. So I'll share it with you. Graduate of the National Defense Academy, an infantryman, commanded both the 3rd Infantry Regiment and the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Forces 1st Airborne Brigade. Just prior to assuming command at TERCOM, General Kaida was the commanding general of the 4th Division. And then as the TERCOM commander, He leads the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Forces think tank for force development, innovation, and collaboration with allies, industry, academia, and government. So he is the Commanding General, Training Evaluation, Education, Research, and Development Command for the Japan Self-Defense Force. Next, I'll jump to Major General retired Susie Vares-Lum, Director of the Daniel K. Inouye Center for Security Studies right here in Oahu. And next, I'm just checking the sequence here, is Major General Hope Rampey, the Commanding General of the U.S. Army Human Resources Command. And then on the far end, Major General Michelle Link, Commanding General 75th U.S. Army Reserve Innovation Command, USARPAC. So just briefly how the panel is going to run. We're going to allow each participant to spend a couple of minutes opening up the discussion. Then we'll get into a discussion among the panel members. Then we'll open it up for your questions. And then finally, I'll give time for each of the panel members to give a few closing remarks. So I'm going to jump this around a little bit. I'm going to open up with Major General Rampey's opening comments.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity to test out the mic, so hopefully I don't sound too loud. I have the unique pleasure of being the Commanding General for Human Resources Command, and your Army Human Resources Command is responsible for taking care of active Guard Reserve, the inactive Ready Reserve, retirees, veterans, and families, and providing world-class HR support. We do that through focusing on our values, which is transparency, agility, and customer-centered. And really right now we're on a journey to improve our soldier experience. And we're doing that through automating, eliminating, and simplifying processes and systems in order to provide readiness to the Army.
Thank you very much, Hope. Appreciate that. And we'll jump next to Major General retired Vares-Lum and the Director of the Inouye Center for Security Studies.
Thank you so much, General Johnson, and it's wonderful to be here. Thank you, General Brown and the AUSA team, as well as General Clark and Command Sergeant Major Schmidt, and the USARPAC team. It's the Daniel K. Inouye Asia-Pacific Center for Security Studies. I'll just do a quick poll here. How many of you are graduates of one of our programs? If you could just look around. Thank you for raising that hand really high. We're really proud. 31 years. The center was established here in Honolulu, Hawaii, but we reach the entire region in the Indo-Pacific. All services, not just security practitioners in uniform, but as well as all of the interagency, as well as non-governmental organizations that come together. Security practitioners to not just educate, but to connect and empower. We strengthen deterrence by bringing together U.S., ally, and partner security practitioners to really look to solve, and that's a big shift and focus right now, solve those challenges that we heard earlier, bringing the key people together to have lasting relationships. We are so proud that we are approaching now 17,000 alumni. I've been saying 16,000 for the past year, but really we've had almost 1,000 that have come through this past year. And probably many of you in this room might know someone, senior leaders. About 2,300 of our alumni have become either chiefs of their services, chiefs of defense, some prime ministers and ministers of various other areas, whether it's foreign affairs or commerce, that have come through our program. So I'm excited to talk more about what's available and what we're trying to do in terms of solving and looking for opportunities to solve those challenges that we're facing. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Susie. General Kaida.
Yeah. Thank you for a kind introduction. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all those involved for granting me an opportunity to participate in this legendary conference. I'm Lieutenant General Kaida, the commanding officer of the Training, Evaluation, Education, Research and Development Command, TACOM, in Japan Ground Self-Defense Force, JGSDF. TACOM is equivalent to the TACOM is an organization equivalent to the U.S. Army, TSUCOM, and U.S. Marine Corps, CD&I, and TCOM. It is responsible for the JGSDF's future operational concept, human resource development, and planning and exercise control of JGSDF service-level large-scale exercises. In line with the theme of today's panel discussion, we fulfill our role as a driving force to enhance our combat capability of JGSDF's unit from the perspective of human resource development. We are responsible for basic education, including the War College, the Command and General Staff course, the Technical Command and General Staff course, and Command Sergeant Major course to cultivate personnel who form the core of our organization. Simultaneously, in terms of training, we plan and exercise large-scale exercises such as Japan-US Australia Trilateral Command Post Exercise, Yamasakura, YS, and JGSDF exercise to give our unit with mission rehearsal element. Furthermore, in collaboration with relevant agencies of the Allied and like-minded countries, we are collecting lessons learned from the aggression against Ukraine and considering the future force structure of the JGSDF with taking those observed trends into consideration. Additionally, with a focus on close collaboration with industry and academia, we have established exchange frameworks and are striving to create opportunities for military, academia, industry collaboration by hosting forums and other entities. Regarding today's event, I hope to deepen your understanding of the JGSDF and our organization, TARCOM, through this panel discussion. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. General Link.
Yes, so good morning, everybody, and thank you. It's my privilege to be on stage with my esteemed colleagues, and always nice to be back in Hawaii. So I left about 2 years ago, finishing up after defueling Red Hill. So for my JTF Red Hill, familiar members in the audience, just a shout out there. But went back to my reserve status, whereupon I am the Deputy Capability Portfolio Executive, because we've changed the name so many times within acquisition reform for ground combat platforms. So on the civilian side, I work for Army Acquisition. But on the reserve side, when I returned, I took command of the 75th Army Reserve Innovation Command. That unit is headquartered in Texas, in Houston. It is the only innovation command within the Army's inventory. Innovation means a lot of different things to different people, depending on the context. In this context, and the premise of the unit, it was established in 2018. It was converted from a training division to the 75th, and at that time was direct support to Army Futures Command. With the change in organizational realignment through ATI and then continuous transformation, the unit is now direct support to Futures and Concepts Command. And the premise is to leverage civilian-acquired skill sets, just as was done when we built the JTF Red Hill Task Force, but to leverage those skill sets to work on and solve hard problems within all compos of the Army. These are leaders in the industry. They are CEOs, CTOs, programmers, AI, large language models, cybersecurity, hackers, ethical hackers, PhDs, astronauts, all of those things that are resident, particularly within Compos 2 and 3, based on what we do on the civilian side, that we can bring to bear to shape and refine requirements and solve problems across the whole .mil PF spectrum, regardless of compo.
So thank you. So your mic is now warmed up. I'm going to start with the first question there. You did good. So the Army has undergone its most significant transformation in decades, with the implementation of the Army Transformation Initiative and followed closely by the implementation of continuous transformation. What are some of the examples of how this transformation is optimizing people and performance in practice?
Sure. So an Army Transformation Initiative came out, and then it was followed by continuous transformation, which by its very nature means almost never ending, right? So it's continuous. So we get in this do loop of looking at what are the organizational construct that need to be modernized, what equipment needs to be modernized to maintain pace with the current threat, or to look at the future operating environment, look at skill sets that are no longer maybe as relevant. There has been talk about looking at functional areas such as acquisition or simulations and reducing those in favor of other skill sets or ORSA. There's a lot of discussions about operational data teams, about creating those exquisite skill sets that can help the Corps and ASCC commanders. But looking at quite a bit of reform, looking at organizational changes, how to gain efficiencies within processes, how to break down perhaps some of those siloed behaviors or organizational constructs that have existed over time. Making that transition from COIN to large-scale mobilization, large-scale combat operations, and really looking, as many of you may be affected by some of the TAA or the Total Army changes where they're going to deactivate certain units or increase capabilities. Acquisition reform is another area where the intent is to create a single accountable lead or officer that's responsible for all of the enablers that are required to bring capabilities quickly and within a modernized format. So empowering leaders at lower echelons, trying to break down some of those historic bureaucracy and silos that have inhibited the ability to get equipment. You know, General Bunson talked about the cheap, the effective. How do you counter drones? How do you do that quickly within a technology life cycle that is so much more accelerated than, let's say, a 10 to 15-year development for a new tank or a next-gen capability? And then lastly, one of the key initiatives, of course, is the transformation and contact. How do we bring technologies that are in support of capability gaps into experimentation early so that soldiers can provide that feedback about what works well, what doesn't work well, so those changes can be made much quicker than they have in the past before programs go into production. So it allows us to both look at tactical innovation, things that units are doing very well on their own, as well as innovation and support of programs of record.
General Rampey, how does HRC fold into that then when you're looking at the human domain?
Yeah, actually, when you were talking about capabilities and transforming in contact, in line with that is you have to have the person first, which is what's unique about our Army, because that is our number one resource, our number one platform, before you can produce any other capability. And what we're doing, looking at as we talk modernization, is right now an Army officer or an enlisted member uses a soldier talent profile, and you have self-professed skills. And a talent manager can say, okay, I see the knowledge, skills, and attributes that the officer enlisted member say they have. I can look at their evaluations. But right now we're scrubbing those with human eyes. But the capabilities exist, as you know, to be able to have the tools to tell me, instead of taking man hours to scrub their file, identifying both officer evaluation, the non-commissioned officer evaluation, and their soldier talent profile, to immediately produce a list of, here's 5 coders that you should consider, rather than it taking me a couple of weeks. So I see in the future, working with some industry right now, if we can afford it, to be able to scrub those files and produce those lists. For those in the audience, you're familiar with the marketplace that the Army uses, both officer and enlisted. For an officer side, it's a two-way market, meaning I, as an officer, get to go on the market, identify what I'm interested in. My talent manager at Human Resources Command makes some suggestions based on those knowledge, skills, and attributes on what you would be competitive for. And the receiving unit gets a vote. And they get to say, hey, I've identified. But some of the commanders in the field right now, you have a list of 100 people that are interested in your unit. What I see in the future is, through those different capabilities and algorithms, is scrape it for you, and I say, here's your top 5 candidates to fit the needs of the unit in order to produce the capability needed.
Yeah, thank you. Let's talk about the perspective on a piece of key terrain in this theater, General Kaida. In light of the severe security environment in East Asia, And as exemplified by the attempts to change the status quo by force by China, what are the key considerations in terms of human resource development for the Japanese Self-Defense Force?
Yeah, thank you. In light of severe security environment, to realize deterrence strategy, I recognize that the human resource development is very essence of defense capability. I believe that TACOM plays a critical role in establishing the most robust framework possible for the realization of deterrence strategy under the General Arai, our Chief of Staff's leadership. Therefore, we focus on, first, enhancing the response capability of units. Second, developing personnel capable of serving as immediate operational forces. And third, strengthen collaboration with ally and like-minded countries. I will elaborate on each as follows. First, at the unit level, I would like to mention examples include the Yamasakura YS exercise, which is conducted in collaboration with USARPAC, USAJ, 3MEF, and Australian 1st Division, and JGSDF exercise, which is conducted at the service-wide level. The YS aims to strengthen collaboration among Japan, the United States, and Australia to contribute to ensuring the peace, stability, and prosperity of not only Japan, but also the entire Indo-Pacific region. It is the largest scale command post exercise within our unit, incorporating elements related to space, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, and UAVs. On the other hand, the JGSDF exercise, conducted once every 3 years, is the largest scale field training exercise, FTX, involving all units of JGSDF for primary operation in the national defense of the southwestern region. Currently, preparation is underway for the next JGSDF exercise scheduled 2027 target year. These exercises are extremely important in enhancing the effectiveness of the JGSDF's response capability, and TACOM plays a leading role as exercise control, EXCOM, to improve our response capabilities. Next, at the individual level, within AWC and CZSC, we integrate mission rehearsal elements into the educational environment. This involves training in targeting, logistic estimates, and civil protection within highly realistic scenarios to ensure students can function immediately when deployed to actual headquarters. Furthermore, we promote the improvement of students' practical skills to participate in realistic major command post exercises, such as YS. Finally, regarding collaboration with the ally and like-minded countries, we facilitate information sharing by collaborating with counterparts such as U.S. Army T2COM and U.S. Marine Corps CD&I and TCOM, as well as those from Australia and France. These engagements serve as a venue for rectifying issues in the force employment at the force design and force development level. Such practical level collaboration is the essence of human resource development, providing skills that will be fully utilized when personnel are eventually assigned to the frontline units. Thank you.
No, thank you. So the general wrapped together everything from lessons from ongoing conflicts, Ukraine in particular, talks about their use of exercises, the schoolhouse, how the schoolhouse plays in that, to develop people to be able to operate in this exceptionally complex environment. So can you talk a little bit about the human element and how you provide this, can you provide a specific example of how a personal relationship forged at an institution like yours translated into a real-world operational success.
Well, thank you so much for that. And just hearing General Kaida talk about Yamasakura, I remember in 1988 when it was all on a board and you'd shuffle these icons, right? And where we've come to, it was bilateral only. And what you've said is about this human innovation. And when I hear Hope talk about how you've changed the whole system using technology, or the innovation that comes from the 75th and using the civilian, all comes from people. That human element, optimizing that is something that this center has done and continues to do. More specifically, when we think about the projects, right now at our center, right around the corner, is 150 fellows from 04 up to 1 star who are there from 25 nations. And we were just at AUSA, and that's where I saw General Brown, at the AUSA Center with another group of multinational armaments resilience seminar from 17 different nations. So this idea and innovation comes from the people. And the idea of that is that we can look at, in this long course, they will be here 5 weeks, they will come up with a project that addresses a very specific issue. And that could be from cyber, maritime domain awareness, fusions of information sharing. How do we get across the line on some real key critical problems? It could be training. It could be a variety of things. Or how do we improve an HR system in a particular country, taking from the examples that we see here from HRC. One very specific one, and we're really proud, and I want to share, is that our alumni of the year came from the Royal Thai Armed Forces this year. So those of you who come from the Royal Thai Armed Forces can be very proud that Colonel Tama Sarit Junjuran leveraged his experience and came up with a project on cybersecurity monitoring, developing a center that did not exist. It's a centralized hub that links all Thai military units to monitor and respond to cyber threats. And we know cyber, AI, emerging technology, how do we deal with the security threats that exist today? This is high on the list of topics and priorities. So he came up with this, and because of his work, we were able to share with the Thai ambassador to the United States, who came by very proud. But this is building upon many other projects, whether it is the defense policy or defense agreements or strategies or evaluation from very different countries, all represented here. These projects don't just arrive after 5 weeks. We do it over a year time span. And we have leveraged our alumni. So proud of our alumni who've volunteered. We have over 200 volunteers now from our alumni around the region who've agreed to mentor, and mentorship, key critical part of this, those fellows who are doing these projects. And some fellows, some alumni have agreed to do cross nations, international, not just within their country. So this is a huge step. So this is how we optimize. I would say that our human resources are our most lethal weapon. We talk about hardware all the time, but it's the people who make the difference. And we've heard that time and time again earlier today.
Yeah, that was good. And actually, it ties right into a question we got from the audience and actually from a foreign officer. And this is directed at General Link. It says, how do we ensure continuous transformation in allies and partner nations to sustain interoperability requirements? And I think if you could just pick up on what the director said about the use of, potentially at least the use of alumni coming out of the center and other programs like that.
Yeah, so interoperability is never an easy question. As we look at that, even with our own formation, and I do appreciate the complexity of that question, the ability to communicate, the ability to communicate effectively with allies, so you have an equipping solution, which going back down to TIC, and as we look at a couple of initiatives that are ongoing right now to be able to have modular open system architectures that allow for systems to communicate and then allow for communication with allied partners. So that's one aspect of it, and one thing that's playing into a lot of the TIC activities right now. There's currently an ongoing effort, it's called Right to Integrate, looking at capabilities, starting with like next-gen communication systems and how we do that. Broadening out to that interoperability is as well the having the soldiers or the users that are competent and capable in those technologies and capabilities so that they're able to employ them effectively. And we look at the effects that we're trying to achieve with those systems and with the personnel that are operating them. It is a pretty vast ecosystem. Interoperability has not been an easy problem to identify solutions. So having the capabilities, the skill sets, having the right level of like experiences. So if you're going to have somebody that's out there doing the programming, looking at what that means, not just to integrate across the Army active component reserve and guard, but then how do we integrate across? And a lot of the TIC efforts are targeted at doing that. And I think as we look at some of the exercises, and as T2Com and FCC lay out their exercises, looking at those opportunities, let's say in Balakatan, when we're creating visualization tools that incorporate allied nations into those discussions, and how do we create those tools, and how do we communicate those across? So not just interoperability of the communication systems, but interoperability across the range of visualization tools that exist relative to certain aspects or common operating pictures and capabilities.
So Hope, somebody that can do that, in fact, a whole army that can do it with leaders that are attuned to that. How do you pick the right people for the right job? You talked about AI tools earlier, helping to identify where that talent is or where those skills and experience are. How would AI play into this? Is there a innovation gene or something that you can target that you're looking through the AI tool?
I don't know if we call it a genie, but I mean there are agents, AI agents, and so I think looking past just large language models, simple algorithms, and now it's agentic AI and how to use those capabilities. As I mentioned before, technology already exists. And industry is outpacing us in our affordability of those capabilities. And so with Human Resources Command, if I'm not going to get it in my budget, then where can I de-scope current contracts on old systems and willing to take the risk of doing away with some of our old toolkits and our applications in order to actually invest? And I talked about our customer and taking care of soldiers and families and veterans. And so one of the first areas that we're actually, hopefully I go live next month, is using different AI capabilities and agents to answer our call center. And a lot of people think, wow, you have a call center. We do. And last year we had over 187,000 calls. And so while you can do a lot online and people want to use an agent to answer questions and chat with, there's still a number of people that want to hear a human on the other end and not getting rid of that human dimension. But really when I heard you talk about the capabilities again, what I was thinking in my space also was getting to the left of having that capability is what do you recruit to? Yeah. And so while Recruiting Command has that mission, I own the retention mission for the Army. And so it's looking at where do we have space to train at the schoolhouses and what MOSs, military occupational skills, do we need to assess into our Army, and how do we transform in contact, changing those numbers and capabilities in order to get to what General Brunson mentioned earlier today was who's looking over the next berm rather than just hitting that 25-meter target. So recruit for that next generation Army that we're going to need.
Right, and if I may add,
Sure.
When we go down this road for the 75th, looking to acquire those civilian skill sets, those don't typically reside in any HRC systems, right? Because they're looking at the MOS, so it's a shift. And how do we look at the total population and the skill sets that they bring? And using AI tools depends on the data that's input, right, on the learning models that are there in order to do that scraping. So the challenge for us has been creating the skill sets, not just, hey, are you a programmer? But have you done this type of programming at scale to solve this problem? So it requires development of those AI tools to do the scraping. And how do we cascade that? So it's a traditional, as we look at let's say a 12 alpha engineer, or am I looking for somebody that has done, a specific task on a day-to-day basis at scale that we can leverage in support of an Army problem? So it's a combination of both, but it is a challenge because we've only looked at it maybe through the Army lens of how we train and recruit versus, hey, what are the other things that maybe could speak to innovation as an enabler to Corps commanders and ASCC commanders, and how do we capitalize on those skill sets?
Yeah. Go ahead.
And I'm
please.
sorry, sir.
No.
I just thought about it. I
They'd
really
much rather
answer
hear
your
you
question.
talk
I'm
than
just
me.
saying whatever I want. But you specifically asked about, AI and how we're utilizing that. And you talked about data and whatever data is in the system.
Yeah.
And it's got to be good data, right? Corrupt, old data is not helpful. And one of the things we're using to scrape some of the data is adding additional skill identifiers. So I might say I need a coder, but specifically I need someone who knows Python in order to maybe get at something. And so it's, do we have the right additional skill identifiers, the right data in the system in order to produce the information she will need?
So both of you are talking about adaptation. And I think we see in Ukraine, we saw it in the Middle East, I think we've seen it in every conflict, the ability for a force to adapt quickly. And that includes finding the right skill sets or taking advantage of skill sets that maybe we didn't realize we needed before. Sir Michael Howard said the best we can do is get it the least wrong, and then when the fight starts, we know what it really looks like. General Kaida, so what measures are being taken from the perspective of human resource development to rapidly adapt to accelerating advancements in science and technology, as pointed out in the lessons learned from the war in Ukraine?
Thank you. I will address this matter through following 4 perspectives. First, information gathering. Second, basic education. Third, unit training. And fourth, military, academia, industry collaboration. First is about information gathering. With regard to the lesson learned from the aggression against Ukraine and various other wars and battles, we conduct information gathering and analysis of rapidly evolving technological trends in collaboration with domestic organizations, experts, the ally, and like-minded countries. Next, from the perspective of basic education, to cultivate technical personnel capable of keeping pace with rapidly advancing science and technology, we have established the Technical Command and General Staff course, separate from the Command and General Staff course. This course develops personnel who will become senior officers engaged in roles such as R&D and administration. This program primarily admits individuals with doctoral level degree and includes education on technologies and equipment utilized in Ukraine with aim of incorporating various technological innovations into JGSDF. Through the research and discussion, we strive to foster the student critical thinking skills and provide education on future R&D methodologies. During this approximately one-year course, students participate as augmented staff in large-scale exercises such as YS, which allows them to gain first-hand experience in unit operations. Students also deepen mutual understanding through discussions with employees from key defense industries through Defense Production Internship Program, thereby cultivating their professional potential as technical officers. Next, from the perspective of unit training, we are striving to adapt to latest science and technology in various exercises by incorporating ways of warfare that utilize unmanned aerial vehicles, as well as those leveraging the domains of space, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, based on the lesson learned from the war of Ukraine. Lastly, regarding military, academia, industry collaboration, to address the speed gap where civilian technological development outpaces the military sector. We have established the GTA Council to unify JGSDF's R&D and improvement efforts to collaborate with companies from defense production and technology base. GTA stands for G, Grand Staff Office, T, TACOM, and A, Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics Agency. GTA Council promotes consistent coordination between GSO, TACOM, ATORA, and companies, creating opportunities to provide industry with predictability. And technical command and general staff course graduates are actively contributing this council. Ways of warfare in Ukraine are updated every moment. The key point is that we need to develop personnel capable of keeping pace with this rapid change, with taking advantage of these opportunities. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we get another question from the audience, and I'll shift to these questions now. And Susie, this is from another foreign officer. So General Brown, we got the right people here participating in this for sure. This question, which ties into the discussion we've been having, is how does education in Indo-Pacific domain, how is it influenced by the multiple flashpoints or the probable flashpoints in the Western Hemisphere and in the Middle East?
Well, you know, I'll address that. I just want to tie on something that
Sure.
I'm hearing is the agility and the ability to make sure that the human element is at the forefront of any kind of new technology, whether it's AI, AI-led, AI directed, and the agility that happens, you know, across when we're sharing information. But to the point of, you know, how do we heard General Brunson this morning talk about the impacts, whether it's in Ukraine, Middle East, what's happening, how does it impact us here in the Indo-Pacific? I think in order for us to fully understand everyone's thought in this room that are coming from different countries, we heard over 26 nations in here, that we actually have to come together and have that exchange. And so this group that's together, incidentally, 25 of them, and 26 in here, nations, that can exchange ideas to have a common operating picture of the threat environment from the perspective of each person here. How someone sees the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea will be different from everyone that sits along the 9-dash line. How we see what's happening in the Pacific or its importance of it. How does Australia and New Zealand see the Pacific and the United States, the Northern Pacific? You know, how do we see ASEAN and what's the role? ASEAN centrality for whom? How does, you know, South Asia and the Indian Ocean, as we see everything happening there? We won't understand that until we all come together. Now, some people might say, well, I don't have 5 weeks. I don't have a week to come together. I don't have time to come here. Well, how are you going to meet 26 nations in one place? You can now have that opportunity. So you're actually working. The other piece is, if we really want to understand how we solve these problems together, is create cohorts. Right now we have cohorts in our center, whether it's Papua New Guinea looking at the Maritime Fusion Center, bringing interagency from Papua New Guinea. But one of the things that we've thought about is, what if it is either bilateral cohorts or this multinational cohort with 17 nations interested in advancing the defense industrial base, as you had mentioned, to actually look for the gaps and seams and understand the lay of the land. I think we need to do more of that, and we need to have real positive outcomes. We have a sense of urgency right now. We have been given that task, and I think many other nations here have as well.
Yeah, General Rampey, so can we track that? I know Susie tracks that and can reach into that population, but do our HR tracking tools allow us to identify the people who've participated in these kinds of programs? If a commander says, I need a certain stripe of somebody that has this experience or these connections?
Yes, if the data is correct in the system. But I think it's also the tracking not only of those capabilities that they've received through various training exercises and the fellowships that you provide, but it's also reinvesting in the Pacific and making sure that we're keeping talent in the right place. I mentioned open markets where people get to at least have a say, some agency in where they want to go. I think we still have an old mindset sometimes of you have to move to different locations and get different experiences. And I think there's some goodness in that, but there's also some goodness in having a depth and a breadth of experiences and practices inside the Pacific in order to operate at the optimum level. And so we allow commanders now to look at that market and select people. So an officer that says, I want to do more than 3 years in Hawaii, go compete in the market. And if you're the right talent, the commander's going to want to keep you. And if you're not, go get a different experience and come back to it. But I think there's extraordinary value in reinvesting that training and capability back into Indo-PACOM.
Can I
Yeah,
add,
please jump in.
I just want to say that the Army is the only service that gives a skill identifier for the Indo-Pacific for attending our courses. The only service. So I tell the other services this all the time.
General Inc. So you look at this, and you've talked about it here today, through the lens of an innovation command. Can you talk to how these kinds of experience impact innovation and how your command and the programs that you run take advantage of that?
Sure. I think that one of the things that's not well understood or appreciated is maybe in TIC and how we identify innovation is that if it doesn't go somewhere, then it's a waste of resources. If we're going to bring a capability out to the field or out to a training event and soldiers get to utilize it or play with it or experiment it, but that feedback loop doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go back into T2COM to shape and refine a requirement perhaps for a material solution. That's part of the gap that we bridge with the soldiers that are in the formation, my formation in particular, to go do the data science analysis of what were we trying to achieve with that particular capability compared to baseline? Did we move the needle? And it's not just a material solution. It could also be a process. It could be an organization. If you look at, let's say, unmanned autonomous breaching for an engineer, a company, and what does that look like relative to either an ABCT or an IBCT when you're looking at those capabilities. So documenting organizationally what might need to change in that new environment, bringing in those soldiers with the skill sets, many of whom work for private industry. So roughly half of the 75th works for private industry. The other half works somewhere within the DoD across all of the services and up at the OSD level. As we look at those capabilities. But you've got to have the ability to do something with that. And so shaping and refining a requirement that might lead to a capability that would eventually be procured, produced, and fielded into the hands of the user is really important in that space. And as well, any communication that we may have, let's say, with the training and doctrine part of that reorganization. But as you well know, FCC is the organization that's responsible for requirements. So if we're going to get a capability of need statement to put something in the hands of users, that's the information that's got to flow back so that they can continue to move that. Where we create a little bit of that valley of death when we talk about TIC and some of those innovation efforts is that it has to go to the organization that has the authority to do something with it, either the funding or the authority by design to execute or implement. We continue to bring equipment into exercises and training, but we've got to do something with it to get it over the finish line so that it's out at scale in the hands of users.
General Kaida, a question from the audience here. We've spoken about AI. General Rampey has in particular talked about the use of AI in helping to shape the talent pool. So how is the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force using AI to support you in your mission?
Okay. I think the new ways of warfare includes AI and other cutting-edge materials. And first of all, I think most important point is really industrial base matter. It's completely different from the previous matters, especially new ways of warfare, including AI and massive use of UAVs is actually taking place. We must consider how Japan responds against future conflict, taking into account the unprecedented speed of feedback cycle, such as drone performance being updated within 2 to 3 weeks, observed during the aggression against Ukraine. And furthermore, we should take into account the scale of procurement pursued by other countries. Additionally, I think how to cope with this kind of matter is the biggest challenging matter, I think. And I also have to cooperate the, first of all, excuse me.
Sure, take your time.
In order to meet these challenges, we need to carry out the following. First, acquiring low-cost and high-performance platforms. Second, establishing a system that enables stable procurement. And third, building a structure for rapid modification and maintenance, depending on specific situations. To this end, it is quite important to maintain the robust defense production and technology base that is capable to deal with them within our own countries. And to respond to the long-term conflict, I think it will be necessary to build up posture that ensures support from the ally and like-minded countries by promoting the collaboration with them from peacetime to contingency consistently. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on that?
I was just thinking when you had mentioned earlier about the training base and being able to keep up with that and the capabilities we need, that the ability to identify, recruit, assess, but I think we still have a sticking point in our training base, both through capacity and also our platforms, whatever that training capability is. Some doesn't exist yet. And in other areas, few exist, and so your throughput is not going to put through enough people to deliver the capability you're looking for.
And I think that's why it's important that we leverage our allies and partners. A great opportunity. I mean, there's a lot of innovative ideas that are happening. You can see it if we just look within our own organization, the total force of the Army, and then you're starting to expand it out to the civilian sector that leverage that power, and then you start to leverage the power of bilateral and then multilateral. I think we have no choice but to do that if we really want to move faster, smarter, in a way that makes sense and maintains security that we need.
Yeah, we can't learn in a linear way. We have to take advantage of everybody's learning and then pick and choose among that to get us to where we're trying to go, so that we can adapt. There's a great question here from the audience asking for our thoughts on the challenge of developing soldiers and civilians who possess critical thinking skills and have operational environment context, right? That's we've been kind of trying to describe here. I mean, the question is asking, how do you use that to develop and understand AI in the execution of the job. So different from just using AI to help us understand talent, find talent, and put talent in the right place. But what are the characteristics that need to come together to allow us to develop our workforce and our soldiers to use the AI tools they're gonna come in contact with? And let me ask General Link to kick that off.
Yeah. So I think in context of the question, I'll just divert for a second. So if we look at entire organizations, right, technology is a generational gap. We have soldiers that were born digital, that this language is part of their DNA. We have soldiers that can't spell AI. So the disparity between the tools and the training and what they're able to do is pretty vast. And when we think in terms of how do we train them using tools, but to maintain critical thinking, having a human in the loop, not going to AI and saying you're going to be the end-all solution, I think is a very important point. You have to have that critical thinking. You have to have the experiences to have a well-informed. AI should be a tool. AI should not be a replacement for those type of capabilities. And when we look at training the workforce or training soldiers, what are the things that we can democratize? What are the skill sets? So yes, Power BI, that's something we can push down and it becomes a language. What are the problems that require exquisite skill sets that can't be easily replicated? Somebody's doing the programming behind the scenes in Vantage, for example. In figuring out, as you're developing your particular workforce or your formation, what are the key problems you're trying to solve and what are the capabilities that are needed to get there? Because we jump to a solution that says maybe that everybody's got to have this exquisite skill set. So we're going to create a training routine. We're going to try to get everybody to Army Software Factory, which you can't, or maybe not replicate something that's done on the civilian side at scale as a matter of routine. So I think just understanding the types of problems that are being solved and the type of skill set that are necessary, the ones that are exquisite or unique and the ones that you can power down to 80% of the formation, kind of like your combat logistics, or your, not combat logistics, that's my other role, combat lifesaver, right? So you think about CLS versus 68 whiskey versus a surgeon. You're not trying to make surgeons out of the rest of your formation to get at that specific problem, but just understanding what those technology gaps are in your formation and figuring out the right solution that is more efficient and effective to get after the problems that you're trying to solve.
I love what she said about AI to enable, not to replace, and that importance of that human in the loop. But I really think it's our professional military education and the fact that as an Army, we value it. Some people show up and they're checking the block. I just want to get through this course. You guys don't have to raise your hands. But it's thinking through, okay, where did I actually apply myself? Where was I a sponge in that course? And really being a student of our profession, because you don't wake up and become a critical thinker. You know, we see it in our own children, right? If you're feeding them everything and they're not having to think through a problem set, whether it's tying your shoes or making a decision, you don't become a critical thinker because you went to the senior service college. And so I think it's making sure that we don't just focus on a vocational capability, that the core thing that sets our Army apart is our professional military education. And we put the rigor back into it. We develop critical thinkers, or we demand critical thinkers so they can be strategic leaders in the future.
Susie, how does AI play into the programs that you have at the center, or does it?
Yeah, actually it does, because we need to be able to address exactly what they said. What role does AI play, and what is the balance of critical thinking? Critical thinking is so essential if we really want to solve these problems. You know, one of the things that General Kaida mentioned is exercises, right? So integrating these exercises with AI tools into them. So that is a new journey that we're taking, that all of these courses have an element of wargaming or tabletop. And some of them are scenario-based. So we've had actually looking at what does AI say about the response that you had, and have them feedback, use it for a feedback loop, and not just the answer. Like, give people a chance to work through the problem, see what AI says, and even to the point of role-playing various figures in the region, adversaries, and what they would do, taking a look at that data. So that has been a new venture, and we're getting ideas not just from US, but from our allies and partners and how they're using it. And then it's inspiring them to look at how do they train their forces. So it's moving on from just us and that feedback loop that comes back and forth from these countries. So it's been really beneficial. But I think we're not moving fast enough. That's why we need each other to share ideas, and that comes with trust, to trust each other enough so that we'd share this information with one another.
General Kaida, do you use AI in your wargaming in the way that the director just spoke about?
In reality, in Yamasakura exercise or some other bilateral exercise with U.S. Army, we use the U.S. algorithm. Then they also use their AI and the other parts of cutting-edge technologies. But I think, of course, AI, drone, and many cutting-edge products is very important. But I think drone is one of our equipment. And I think most important point is we have to keep in mind the next need. What should be addressed and what kind of products we have to prepare for the future conflict is the most important point. And that's why every panelist already says that the critical thinking skill is the most important point through this our basic education. Thank you.
So you spoke a little bit earlier about the use of mission rehearsal exercises. Yes. How does that factor in to what you just discussed?
Thank you. Mission rehearsal aspect is, I think, a very important point to cope with the current security environment. For example, I would like to introduce some aspect of mission rehearsal as elements. First, incorporation of more practical scenario into education. For example, on operational art and tactics. And second, student participation in major large-scale exercise such as YS and Keen Edge. And regarding incorporation of more practical scenario into education on operational art and tactics, we provide scenario-based education incorporating practical elements such as targeting, logistic estimates, defense-related laws, and civil protection under cross-domain operational environment in the southwestern region, and deepening understanding on these elements through student discussions. Regarding participation in major large-scale exercises such as YS and Keen Edge, students effectively integrated into the large-scale exercise execution process by engaging in duties related to intelligence, operations, and logistics. As players in the Ground Component Command, regional armies, and other echelons, students can improve practical capabilities related to the operation of Ground Component Command and regional armies. The outcome of their effort is reflected in follow-on scenario-based education in the classroom.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we're at the point, by the way, thank you for all the questions. We couldn't get to them all, but trust me, when this group leaves the stage, you should launch on them and ask them the questions yourselves, because there's some really good questions here directed at each one of you. But let's take a final minute and go through the group for any, pulling the thread through this for any final comments you have in conclusion. Let me start with General Lincoln.
Yes, so again, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the questions. I look forward to any follow-on conversations subsequently. I would just challenge you as you look at future operating environments, look at future threat and how you think about innovation, whether it's the skill sets, whether it's a capability, whether it's advanced manufacturing forward or something else. Think about innovation as an enabler and what that means and how you customize and tailor specific skill sets to focus or to support problems at that edge. So whether it's at the core commander level, at the ASCC level, just would challenge you to think about how you implement those type of strategies into the future operating environment.
Okay, thank you. General Rampey?
I would just ask, we talked about critical thinkers, and most good ideas don't come from Human Resources Command. It comes from people in the field. And so if you have feedback as we look at identifying talent, training the right talent, the flexibility to go from one branch to a functional area and back, changing that process as we've done over this past year and a half. If there's other ideas, please share. And I do mean it. I'm only Rampy Hope and Global. We can't change and evolve because of one individual at one command, but together we can come together, put good ideas, pen to paper, critical thought together, and I think it will, transform our future Army because we have to continue to evolve in order to get past that next berm.
Yeah, perfect. Director Varsal.
Well, thank you, General John. Thank you for this panel. It's been wonderful to be able to share more about how we can share resources with one another and ideas. And that's what we're about. If you're not familiar with the Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, I urge you, we're one of 6 regional centers, but there are other resources. So it's good to hear the educational programming that exists in Japan and many other countries and how we can share these ideas. So we have courses available for everyone here, and if you want more information, please come by and find us online. Thank you so much.
Thank you. General Kaya?
Yes. In today's panel discussion, I have explained the initiative of the JGSDF, especially those of TARCOM. I believe we engage in a highly meaningful discussion with the fellow panelists and the audience, which is worthy of kicking off this panel of LANPAC 2026. In light of civil security, turning our attention into the current civil security environment, attempts to unilaterally change the status quo by force becoming increasingly apparent across the world. Within this context, the Indo-Pacific region, characterized by the aggressive activities of Russia, North Korea, and China, can be said as a significantly critical theater. In light of civil security environment, to realize deterrence strategy, I totally recognize that the human resource development is the very essence of defense capability. Therefore, TACOM will fulfill its role in establishing the most robust foundation possible to realize the deterrence strategy under the guidance of our Chief of Staff. In closing, I deeply appreciate and having this kind of opportunity to participate in this outstanding panel discussion. I wish to extend my heartfelt appreciation to all those involved, most especially to our moderator, Lieutenant General Johnson, and to my esteemed fellow panelists, and to every member of the audience here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank General Brown and AUSA for pulling this panel together and leading off the panels with a focus on the human dimension and the importance of the individual and the development of the individual towards our future success. Would you please join me in thanking the panel for their participation today?
What a great first panel. What a great discussion. We'll now take our break for lunch. Please join us for lunch in both the Hawaii Ballroom and the Honolulu Suite. Our lunch reception is sponsored by General Dynamics Mission Systems. Thank you, GDMS. As you explore the exhibit hall, don't forget to check out the USARPAC's Commanders Forum. Please join us back here at 1345 to hear from my afternoon keynote speakers, Admiral Paparo. Thank you very much.